There are
Imagine tiny
microplastics in your
plastics
blood right now,
silently invading
literally
every corner
invisible
globally.
fragments of plastic
These particles
circulating
are
through your
smaller
body.
than grains of
But
sand.
here's the thing.
They float
You
in
can actually
oceans,
reduce
rivers,
this.
and even
First,
clouds.
ditch bottled
Scientists
water.
call them
Use a
microplastics.
reusable bottle instead.
Hidden, yet dangerous
Second,
everywhere.
wash synthetic clothes less
Microplastics
often,
come from
or
everyday
use a
products we
microplastic filter
often
bag.
discard.
Third,
Synthetic
skip
fibers
the
from
cosmetics
clothes
with
enter
microbeads.
water after every
These
wash.
tiny changes,
Packaging
they
waste
add up
breaks
fast.
down into
Start with
microscopic
just one
plastic
today.
fragments gradually. Tiny beads in cosmetics also contribute to this problem. Fishing nets and ropes shed plastics into oceans regularly. Even tire dust becomes microplastics during vehicle movement. These invisible threats are now found in Arctic ice. Plastic particles travel far, carried by wind and water. Oceans act like sponges, absorbing massive plastic amounts. Microplastics concentrate toxins from surrounding polluted waters effectively. Fish and shellfish accidentally consume these tiny fragments. Microplastics accumulate in the food chain rapidly over time. Birds and marine mammals often ingest microplastics unknowingly. Some animals mistake plastics for food, causing starvation. Microplastics can physically block digestive systems, harming wildlife. Studies show plastics leach harmful chemicals into organisms. Additives in plastics disrupt hormonal balance subtly, yet dangerously. Even humans are exposed through seafood consumption regularly. Drinking water worldwide contains microplastic particles almost everywhere. Bottled water often contains more microplastics than tap. Airborne microplastics enter lungs through daily inhalation silently. Household dust contains microscopic plastic fibers constantly accumulating. Washing synthetic fabrics releases hundreds of thousands particles. Microplastics persist in environments for decades without degradation. Oceans contain floating plastic islands visible even from satellites. Microplastics have infiltrated some of Earth's remotest areas. Studies find particles in remote mountain snow surprisingly. Plastics fragment into ever smaller pieces over time. Nanoplastics are tiny, invisible, yet highly toxic particles. They can penetrate tissues in fish and humans alike. Tiny plastics carry bacteria and pathogens across ecosystems. Coral reefs are affected as microplastics settle on surfaces. Sediment-dwelling creatures ingest plastics, mistaken for food constantly. Microplastics can affect reproduction and growth in marine species. Some chemicals in plastics are linked to cancers indirectly. Microplastics threaten food security by harming fisheries globally. Plastic pollution is not just ugly, it's toxic. Solutions require systemic change in production and consumption habits. Individual action alone cannot solve this invisible menace entirely. Awareness is the first step toward reducing plastic pollution. The invisible threat of microplastics demands urgent global attention. Microplastics infiltrate soil, altering its natural composition subtly. Earthworms ingest particles, spreading plastics throughout farmland quietly. Crops absorb microplastics through roots into edible tissues. Tiny plastic fragments enter human food chains unknowingly. Honey, salt, and sugar have tested positive worldwide. Microplastics are now detected even in beer globally. Bottled beverages contain microscopic plastics from packaging leaching. Seafood is one of the largest microplastic exposure sources. Fish intestines often carry plastics invisible to eyes. Shellfish filter water, accumulating plastic particles within tissues. Eating contaminated seafood exposes humans to toxins silently. Chemicals in plastics disrupt hormones, fertility, and metabolism. Some studies link microplastics to immune system dysfunction. Plastics also carry heavy metals like mercury and lead. Toxic compounds attach to microplastics floating in oceans. Birds mistake floating plastics for food, starving slowly. Seals and turtles choke on larger plastic fragments often. Microplastics can cause inflammation in marine organisms' digestive systems. Coral reefs ingest plastics, reducing their growth dramatically. Microplastics interfere with reproduction in planktonic creatures subtly. These tiny particles may destabilize entire marine food chains. Rivers act as highways, transporting plastics to oceans. Urban runoff carries microplastics from streets into waterways. Rain washes tire dust into streams and drains consistently. Microplastics travel thousands of kilometers before settling on seabeds. Deep-sea ecosystems are not immune to this invasion. Sediment samples reveal microplastics in even the remotest trenches. Polar ice contains plastic particles transported by winds. Melting glaciers release trapped microplastics into freshwater systems. Atmospheric transport spreads microplastics across continents invisibly. Urban air can contain hundreds of plastic fibers daily. Indoor dust exposes humans to microplastics regularly unknowingly. Laundry and textiles are major indoor microplastic contributors continuously. Plastic packaging and bags fragment into tiny particles rapidly. Microplastics persist because they do not biodegrade naturally. They accumulate in ecosystems, causing long-term environmental harm. Chemical pollutants stick to plastics, magnifying ecological risks. Plastics affect soil microbiomes, reducing fertility and diversity. Microplastics are now recognized as emerging pollutants globally. Scientists warn of unknown long-term human health consequences. Nanoplastics can cross biological barriers, reaching organs directly. Tiny plastics in bloodstream may trigger inflammation and damage. Awareness campaigns alone cannot fully stop microplastic pollution. Global regulations are slowly targeting single-use plastic reduction. Urgent action is needed to combat this invisible menace. Microplastics are even found in Arctic ice layers. They travel thousands of kilometers via ocean currents. Deep-sea trenches contain plastic particles surprisingly widespread. Some plastics reach remote islands untouched by humans. Plastic fibers have been detected in Antarctic snow. Atmospheric transport carries microplastics across continents silently. Airborne particles settle on mountains and farmland alike. Indoor dust contains synthetic fibers from clothes and furniture. Washing machines release hundreds of thousands of fibers daily. Drying clothes also emits microplastics into surrounding air. Plastic fragments accumulate in rivers, even in remote streams. Road runoff carries tire dust and synthetic debris. Rain transports microplastics from cities to natural waterways. Storms increase plastic dispersion, spreading pollution further rapidly. Sediments act as long-term reservoirs for tiny plastics. Benthic creatures ingest particles, transferring plastics to predators. Microplastics disrupt plankton populations, the foundation of oceans. Coral reefs ingest plastics, stunting their growth dramatically. Some plankton mistake microplastics for nutrients, dying afterward. Microplastics absorb harmful chemicals like PCBs and pesticides. Plastics act as vehicles for invasive microbial species. Tiny particles create new surfaces for bacteria to colonize. Microplastics interfere with fish reproduction and embryonic development. Juvenile fish exposed to plastics grow slower, weaker. Predators accumulate plastics indirectly through their prey consumption. Birds and turtles often mistake plastics for jellyfish. Ingested plastics can block digestive tracts completely. Chemicals in plastics may mimic hormones in animals. Studies show immune systems respond negatively to plastics. Nanoplastics penetrate cells, causing oxidative stress internally. Plastic additives can trigger inflammation and tissue damage. Some microplastics remain in organisms for months, even years. Microplastics are persistent, circulating endlessly in ecosystems globally. Soil health declines where microplastics accumulate heavily over time. Fungal and microbial communities are disrupted by plastic contamination. Crops grown in polluted soil can uptake plastic particles. Humans unknowingly consume microplastics via food and drink. Studies find plastics in seafood, salt, and bottled water. Airborne microplastics enter human lungs with every breath. Nanoplastics can travel through the bloodstream into organs. Long-term human health impacts are still largely unknown. Governments are exploring bans on single-use plastics globally. Researchers innovate filters to trap fibers from wastewater effectively. Public awareness campaigns urge reduction of plastic consumption urgently. Microplastics remain a hidden threat, demanding immediate global attention. There are microplastics in your blood right now, literally invisible fragments of plastic circulating through your body. But here's the thing, you can actually reduce this. First, ditch bottled water. Use a reusable bottle instead. Second, wash synthetic clothes less often or use a microplastic filter bag. Third, skip the cosmetics with microbeads. These tiny changes, they add up fast. Start with just one today.